Namaste, everyone. Thank you for joining in this class on Vedic Astrology Foundations, where we are looking in details on the various yogas that have been described by Parashara, as well as other rishis whose works constitute the core of Vedic astrology. And unfortunately, these classes used to be live, but due to some personal constraints, I'm not being able to conduct them live in a way I would have wanted to. But then this is the recording of the 53rd class of this course that we are running, and the videos are available freely on YouTube under the playlist of Vedic Astrology Basic Foundation course. So if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so that you can receive the regular updates. And for those who want to learn Vedic astrology from scratch, then this course is the one for you, where I've tried to, explain everything right from day one in a very detailed manner, using very less complex jargons, or as less complex jargons as possible. So before we get into the topic, like we always do, let's start with the daily Shanti mantra from the Upanishads. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunakatu, Sahaviryankaravavahai, Tejasvinadadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so in the previous classes, we discussed about the Nabhasa yogas and also the yogas dependent upon the ownership of houses by the planets. And besides these, there are other numerous yogas mentioned in the classical texts by authors from Parashara to Varahamihira to Manasagari to Mantresha. And these yogas, of course, deserve special mention. And in today's class, we'll be looking at a few of these yogas. And as usual, these yogas that we'll be looking at today, they are also specific planetary dispositions, which usually, although not invariably, involve two or more planets to affect their formation. And they give their specific results, which are subject to modifications depending upon certain conditions, like the nature of planets forming a particular yoga, the ownership of houses by the planets forming the yoga, the house or houses occupied by the yoga forming planets, the strength of the participants of a yoga. And of course, I always keep on saying in my classes, you have to interpret these results in terms of Desh, Kal, and Patra. Okay, you have to modify your results appropriate, keeping in view the modern context. Okay, and there is no limit, to be very honest, there is no limit to the number of yogas mentioned in the classical texts. But then I'll be covering only a few important ones, which I think will be useful for chart interpretation reasons. Okay, and because of this propensity of the number of yogas mentioned in the classical texts on Jyotish, it is also not easy to classify them, although I'll be making a crude attempt to group them into some categories. Okay, for example, and of course, as I group them, there is bound to be some overlapping amongst the categories. For example, the Gajakesari yoga, which involves the moon primarily, I'll be describing that in a category that will be concerned with the yogas associated with the moon. Okay, so we now proceed to discuss some of these miscellaneous yogas. And the first category is the Panchamahapurusha yogas. Most of you would have heard about these yogas, but then we will be looking at these yogas in great detail. Okay, and these are not yogas, to be very honest, in the strictest sense, because they depend on only one planet. And as such, these are single planet combinations. And based on the strength and location of 5 planets, 5 different yogas may arise, depending on Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn in the horoscope. Okay, and the 5 yogas, the first of these 5 yogas is the Ruchak yoga. It is formed when Mars is exalted or in its own house, and it is located in a Kendra from the Lagna. Okay. Bhadra yoga is formed when Mercury is exalted or in its own house and is located in a Kendra from the Lagna. Hamsa yoga is formed when Jupiter is exalted or in its own house and is located in a Kendra from the Lagna. Malavya yoga is formed when Venus is exalted or in its own house and it is located in a Kendra from the Lagna. And Sasha yoga is the formation which results when Saturn is either exalted or in its own house located in a Kendra from the Lagna. Okay, so I'll give a small description of these yogas in my simplified way. So Ruchak Yoga, the people having Ruchak Yoga, or the natives born under this yoga, they will be very bold and courageous, good looking, having a prominent face, full of strength and vigor, dark haired with beautiful eyebrows, eager for battle, would be having a cruel disposition, would annihilate opponents, would be kingly, discriminating with slim lower limbs, versed in the sacred hymns as well as, the occult, commander of an army, and also a leader of people who are involved in activities against the government, for example, a gang of thieves, maybe. And these people, they will be keen on all adventurous pursuits, may suffer from scars or even death from fire and weapons. And usually they are blessed with a long life of around 70 plus years. Bhadra Yoga, of course, it brings forth a native with the face of a tiger, the majestic gait of an elephant, large chest and shoulders, a commanding stature, skilled in the technique of yoga. Okay, yoga means, techniques, certain techniques. Don't mistake yoga as the positions that you see in YouTube or on television. Those are asanas. Yoga is a complete, it's a complete technique involving yamas, niyamas, asanas, parihara, and so on. Okay, these people will be very learned, intelligent, will be having beautiful body parts, will be dark-haired, sensuous, have a very sattvic nature. They would be knowing the sacred scriptures. They would be blessed with, with friends, children, a good-looking spouse, and physical comforts, and would always enjoy high status and would be long-lived to an age of 80 plus years. Now, for Hamsa Yoga, one who has this yoga, it will be fair complexioned with a voice like that of a swan, and these people will have beautiful limbs and face, will be having a kapha disposition, phlegmatic disposition. That is, there would be a fondness for water sports, a thirst for knowledge of sacred scriptures, a virtuous nature, an intense sexual urge, and comforts of having all comforts at your disposal. These people will be blessed with a beautiful spouse, a lovely physical form, and usually they are expected to live to a ripe age of 100 years. That is what Parashara says. Malavya Yoga is, of course, bestows, is of course due to Venus, and it bestows one with a graceful appearance, slim waist, handsome body, beautiful lips, long arms, deep voice, and sparkling teeth. And these people, they are blessed with progeny, with spouse, wealth, and physical comforts. However, they can indulge in extramarital relationships, but will be well versed in scriptures. And Parashara says that these people, they live long to the age of 70 years. Sasha Yoga is, is all about Saturn, and this can give a cruel nature to the native, leadership over an army, a group, or a village, acquisition of wealth, courage, and valor. These people are usually very competent, learned, and they are nitpickers. Okay, they can easily find faults in others, and they have this tendency of roaming around in jungles, mountains, forts, and other odd places. And these people, they take to metallurgy, acquire the wealth, can acquire the wealth of others, but will be devoted to the mother. Okay, and these people are usually of medium height and slim waist, and they live to an age of 70 years. That is what Parashara says. Okay, but then there are certain factors that we must keep in mind while evaluating the Pancha Mahapurusha yogas. Okay, the first factor is that the Pancha Mahapurusha yogas, they indicate 5 different natives depending upon the predominant influence of each of the 5 planets. That means from Mars to Saturn. So Mars, of course, signifies strength and aggression. Mercury signifies learning and intelligence. Jupiter signifies oratory skills and wisdom. Venus stands for grace and pleasures, while Saturn indicates mass appeal. Now, these Pancha Mahapurusha yogas will yield results only when the sun and moon are strong. Otherwise, they will produce ordinary results during their dasha periods. Okay. And the third factor to consider is that the disposition of the planets causing the yoga must also be seen in the divisional charts, particularly in the Navamsha chart, to know the extent to which the results indicated by this yoga would fructify. Okay. Next, we come to the topic of Chandra yogas. Okay, and Chandra yogas are primarily known as lunar yogas because they arise from the moon. Okay, and what are the different types of Chandra yogas that we have? We'll have a look at that. So the first Chandra yoga that we'll be looking at is, of course, the Sunafa yoga. Okay, and Sunafa yoga is a condition when the second house from the moon is occupied by a planet other than the sun. And Parashara says that this yoga bestows the native with high status huge wealth, capacity to earn his or her own living, religious inclination, virtuous pursuits, and a quiet nature. Now, while interpreting Sunafa yoga, you have to understand that the exact nature of this yoga will depend upon the nature of the planet or the planets causing this yoga. Okay, so there are several varieties of Sunafa yoga that may arise depending upon which depending upon which planet occupies the second house from the moon and whether it is a single occupant or it is associating with other planets. Okay, then comes Anafa yoga, which arises when there is a planet other than sun occupying the 12th house from the moon. And this yoga makes one very healthy, amiable, famous, and renowned, gives oratory skills, produces a virtuous personality, who is very capable, wealthy, and enjoys various comforts and is happy. Okay, now the stress on Sunafa yoga is on accumulation and possession. In Anafa yoga, it is on spending and enjoyment. Okay, and as in case of Sunafa yoga, there are numerous variations in the Anafa yoga also, depending upon the nature and the number of occupants of the 12th house from the moon. Okay, then comes Durdhara yoga. So this yoga arises when there are planets present in both the second and the 12th house from the moon. And here again, you will not consider the sun, and one born under this yoga will earn renown through good speech, learning, valor, and virtue. And this yoga will confer the native with wealth, vehicles, servants, physical comforts, as well as freedom from enemies. Now, in Durdhara yoga, there is this stress on both possession and enjoyment. Okay, and when this yoga is formed by benefics, it is very auspicious. On the other hand, if malefics form this yoga, then it can have a constricting influence on the moon and can produce adverse results. Okay, and you can extend the same principles to medical astrology as well. Okay, when benefics surround the lagna or the lagna lord, they can prove to be very good for health. On the other hand, if malefics are doing the same thing, then they can produce adverse results. Okay, now the strength of these yogas, they are dependent upon the strength of the moon. Kemadruma yoga. So Kemadruma is when the second and the 12th houses from the moon are unoccupied, and this can lead to adverse Kemadruma yoga. Okay, and even if the sun is present in these houses, it does not make much difference. But then there is another thing about Kemadruma. You will see this yoga not only from the moon, even if there is no other planet in the second and the 12th house from any other planet, then also it can lead to Kemadruma yoga. Okay, for example, Saturn can be in a Kemadruma yoga if there are no planets in the second and the 12th from Saturn. And whenever Kemadruma yoga exists in any chart, especially when it hits the moon, then the native can be bereft of a spouse, progeny, learning, and mental peace. And these people, they suffer misery, penury, physical illness, and humiliation. And if a Kemadruma yoga is present, it can destroy the benefic effects of Raja yogas. Okay, but then there are certain conditions that lead to cancellation of the Kemadruma. Okay, and there are certain circumstances that lead to these cancellations. For example, presence of planets and Kendras from the Lagna will cancel the Kemadruma. Presence of planets and Kendras from the moon cancels the Kemadruma. All the planets aspecting the moon, they cancel the Kemadruma. Okay, strong moon. If the moon is strong, that means if the moon is of Shukla Paksha, then, and if it is aspected or associated with benefics which are inflicted like Mercury, Jupiter, or Venus, then also, Kemadruma gets cancelled. So overall, if you're looking at Kemadruma from the moon, then the moon suffers from this dosha if there is no support on the other side. Okay, and it can prove to be very adverse. Then you have something called Adi Yoga, and this yoga is produced by the occupation in the 6th, 7th, and 8th houses from the moon by benefics, Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus. And this gives rise to high status, can give the person with the command of an army, kingship, governmental recognition. And this yoga ensures good health, long life, and prosperity. Okay. Now, just having this yoga is not enough. It requires that the three benefics must occupy the three houses, 6, 7, and 8 from the moon, jointly or singly, in whatever combination. And the malefics should not be present in these houses along with this benefics. Otherwise, the yoga gets spoiled. Okay. And before we wrap up this class, we'll be looking at the Dhana Yogas from the moon. Okay, so if all the three benefics, they occupy the Upachaya houses, that means the 3rd, 6th, 10th, or the 11th houses from the moon, then it produces a very wealthy individual. Okay, if two benefics are present in the Upachaya houses, then it can give medium wealth. And if only one benefic is present, then it ensures ordinary wealth. Okay, so Upachaya houses, of course, are the houses of expansion. And depending upon the location of the moon in a Kendra or a Panafara or an Apoklima house, as reckoned from the sun, the wealth and learning of the individual is ordinary, medium, or plenteous. And results indicated by the Chandra Yogas, they take precedence over the results that are indicated by other yogas. Okay, so next, in the next class, we will be looking at the Surya yogas or the Ravi yogas, as they call, as well as other diverse yogas. Okay, so that's it from me in this class. Do go through the course material that has been provided, and should you have any doubts or questions, kindly leave them in the comment section, and I look forward to answering them. Thank you so much for joining in this class and watching this video. I'll try my best to have the live classes from next week, but that is again depends on a lot of factors. Thank you so much for joining in. I'll see you soon in my other videos. Namaste. Om Gurave Namaha.